were thinking about who should open the symposium as our keynote speaker on the first day, we wanted someone who was experienced, someone who was dynamic, someone who was innovative, and someone who was working in a field that would be of interest and relevance to the people in this room. So we've invited Juliet Anammah to come here. Now, Juliet Anammah is the CEO of Jumia, Nigeria. For those of you who are in Africa or may know, Jumia, and for those who don't know, Jumia has often been called the Amazon.com of Africa. And Jumia is focusing resolutely on client centricity and on technology because they say their ambition is to revolutionize the shopping experience in Africa. So we thought Juliet's experience at Jumia, Nigeria would be relevant and interesting and stimulating for you, which is why we are going to welcome her now. So please welcome to the stage Juliet Anammah, CEO of Jumia, Nigeria.
Good morning, everyone. We're talking about financial inclusion, and I won't bore you with statistics. I mean, you know better than I do what the statistics are, how it's important, and how relevant it is, particularly to continents like Africa. The reason why we're all here is because of the importance that we place on it and how it will be so critical that we are able to bring more consumers into the economy through financial inclusion. So I'm going to focus on sharing my experience in Jumia and our journey as a company, and basically how we see what we are doing currently and what we plan to do in the future, and how that really begins to make some impact on the topic of financial inclusion, and also share a bit of my perspective and outlook of how I think things will shape out in the future. So just a little bit about Jumia. We started in 2012, so really very much a startup and a newbie in the e-commerce platform. When we started in 2012, we started as online retail, okay? And then in 2015, 2016, we pivoted to a marketplace. Now, the difference between those two is in the first one, we are basically selling online our own inventory. And in the second one, 90% of the inventory that is sold on our platform, it belongs to other sellers and not our own inventory, okay? The reason for that is if you wanted to aggregate more products in the market, there's just no amount of capital you could amass that can, on your own and from your shareholders' equity, that can really, really address the needs in the market. And therefore, it was important to make that pivot. When we started also, the market was very much, I would say, nascent in Africa. People didn't understand what e-commerce platforms were. We had people who would go onto Jumia to place an order, and they would literally check out 10 times. And you're wondering, why is this guy checking out 10 times? Because he didn't understand that the basket, which is the symbol there, meant you can put more things in your basket and then check out. So you didn't need to check out, put one thing in your basket, check out, come back again, and put another thing in your basket. At the time also, there wasn't a lot of trust in terms of payment. So people didn't want to trust prepayment. You know, use your card and pay for a transaction, and then you don't know it's going to come. So we had so many people who would place an order on Jumia and then select payment on delivery. And here you are, you carry a whole fridge or freezer or an air conditioner, and you get to the place and the guy says, it really works. I didn't know that. Okay. So we had to come in with a model where we offered both prepayment for people who were already used to Amazon and to shopping at Alibaba and such platforms elsewhere, and then also cater to the base of the market who had never had that sort of experience. And so today we offer payment on delivery, and when you look at the split between the two, 30% is prepaid, 70% is still payment on delivery, be it cash or it's some other USID-based payment mechanism like Mcash, Mvisa, or they're paying with a POS or whatever. Okay. So that was the market in which we came in, and over time, we are now in about 23 countries in Africa, We have more than the e-commerce platform. We also have a travel booking site. It's called Jumia Travel. And we have a food delivery service also called Jumia Food. And then we have some classifieds in some other markets. But the core of our business is really Jumia, which is the e-commerce. And then you have travel booking and food delivery as well. So over time, we've grown. Today, we have, at least in Nigeria, I mean, I can share numbers for Nigeria because that's the market that I'm in. We have over about 10,000 sellers on our platform. Most of those guys are local. And out of these 10,000, possibly only 0.5% to 1% is your typical corporate. So a manufacturer like a Nestle or Procter & Gamble or any of those big brands, or if not the big brands directly by themselves, but through one of their major distributors, which are still fairly well structured and have been in business for years and been able to access financial services through banks and so on. The entire pyramid, if you exclude that 1%, are typically a seller who has never sold more than 50,000 euros in a year or 100,000 euros in a year. And in terms of the number of SKUs, which is number of unique products he has available on the platform, it may not be more than 100. If you go to China, the average seller could have like 1 million SKUs available at a time because really he's coming from a manufacturing background. Chinese e-commerce really started on the back of we are producing for foreign markets and then we have additional capacity which we can then throw into the Chinese market. We don't have that kind of strong base of manufacturing in Africa. And so you find that the sellers you have don't have that depth of assortment as other people have. But it's interesting because at the end of the day, you still have 10,000 people, small, medium enterprises, and they have very unique needs. And here's where I bring in the part about the financial inclusion. These guys probably don't have any collateral or any collateral that a bank wants to look at. The guy has a house somewhere out in the woods somewhere. A bank is not going to take that as a collateral. Most of them, to a large extent, may not even be banked at the moment. Some are banked, but underbanked. In other words, they're not active. Some are not even banked at all. Why? Because the bank is going to ask you, can I have your utility bill so I can verify? I don't have a utility bill. I don't even have electricity to start with. So how am I going to get a utility bill to start with? So we have found other proxies. Now, how do we get into it? It's because we needed to grow. When we started, we probably had 3,000 vendors on our platform. Today, like I said, we have about 10,000. If you need to grow that number, you need to begin to think of how do these guys access working capital? I mean, it is what it is. The vendors I have are the vendors I have. That's what you have in the market. So how are you, given the profile of the seller you have in the market, how do you make sure these guys have access to financial services, access to working capital to be able to grow their business? Because when they grow, then we grow. Okay. So we started looking at other proxies for credit worthiness. So instead of a credit score, the guy is not anywhere on Equifax or Experian or any of those rating agencies. But on the platform on Jumia, it has certain behaviors that are indicative. If a guy never goes out of stock, and believe you me, on e-commerce, it's very easy to go out of stock, okay? Because they're just not used to it. If a customer walks into your offline store and the customer says, well, I want blue, I say, well, I'm sorry, I don't have blue, I have pink. Okay, that's a conversation that happens offline. Online, it doesn't work that way. A customer wants blue, and they just want blue. Don't ship pink. Okay. So you never run out of pink, you must never run out of blue, and these guys it's taken 5 years to train them on those basic things. So when you have vendors out of that base who have learned never to run out of stock, who have learned never to be late on shipment. So I give you a specific timeline. Let's say I promise a customer I would deliver within 3 days. It is dependent on the fact that you're going to ship to me within 24 hours. Then I have another 2 days to ship to the customer. So if consistently a seller is able to ship within 24 hours. That's indicative of some level of discipline that is transferable to when the guy is provided a loan. And so we started testing some of that and started working with some microfinance banks, microfinance institutions and say, hey guys, we've got a huge base of these guys. We can do a sorting and we can tell you these 2,000 or these 3,000, we think that this is their turnover per annum on Jumia, and we think that if you provide some working capital for them, they will expand their business. And it's worked quite well. And the interesting thing is, the average SME, a seller on our platform, is not interested in the annualized rate of the interest on the loan. That means nothing to him because he's working with shorter working capital cycles. Sometimes it's 3 months, sometimes it's 6 months. I mean, the really big guys, we're talking about 1 year at a time. So from the perspective of a guy who's looking at how do I access working capital and therefore be able to turn over within 3 months, he doesn't care about annualized rate. He's looking at what is the transaction cost month on month? What is the fixed charge? What's my margin? Am I positive if I net off my cost? As long as I'm positive, I'm fine. If they stop to do the annualized rate, maybe the interest rate is in the 30s, so 35%, sometimes upwards of 40%. But those considerations don't matter because he's at the fundamental base and trying to get himself up. Maybe by the time he becomes a big company, he starts to look at, well, it should be 10%, well, it should be 15% or 11%, because he's thinking for a longer use of his working capital, longer business cycle, and so on. But at the stage where they are not. Okay. So these are the things that we said, okay, we started bringing in microfinance institutions to support us. Some banks have actually started to say, hi guys, fine, we have a pool of capital that we think we can put to this. You guys deal with the front end. You do the cleaning up and figuring out who to lend to. We can, on the back end, maybe do some other secondary checks and so on and so forth. But really, most of the data which we use to determine is you guys, is Jumia. And then we can decide who we lend to within that pool of vendors. And it's beginning to work. And we're also beginning to ask ourselves, maybe if the banks cherry pick, because ultimately the bank would cherry pick, and then leave out a big base of sellers, maybe we need to start thinking about Jumia lending and what kind of regulatory requirements, licenses do we require to make that possible? Because there's just some people who are banks may not be able to lend to, but we do know that they have potential on Jumia. So that's on the vendor side. When you look at the customer side also, you see people who, like I said before, either they are completely unbanked or they are underbanked, but to a large extent unbanked. And I see customers who come to us today and say, you know what, we just want you, I want to pay in some money into your account, okay? I don't need it now till in two months' time. Can you hold that value for me in terms of a voucher? So we say, okay, fine, we'll hold the value for you. In 2 months' time, maybe the customer wants to use it to buy something on the platform or to buy something for someone else or buy something for his business. So we hold that value. And then we're beginning to say to ourselves, hang on a second, we're providing some financial service here. If you're holding value for someone, even if it's in a voucher, it's not in actual cash, which you can transfer later. It's in a voucher form which the person can activate and use and buy something. It is some value. Maybe we should also look closely at that. The other benefits of thinking this way is that in reality, I mean, customers, sellers, they don't care about words like financial inclusion. They don't know what it means, and quite frankly, couldn't give a hoot, okay? What they care about is, I want to know what are the best sellers on your platform? So let's say I deal in electronics. You tell me, or I deal in fashion. You tell me, what are the common sizes? What are the price points? What are the colors that customers want? Maybe customers don't want pink. I have too much of pink. Maybe customers really want blue. So that when I do access that working capital, I can utilize it much more effectively. Okay? And therefore, my rate of return is much better than if I just use my own intuitive knowledge, because most times they don't have data, they don't have, they're not capturing a lot of their data online, and therefore there's no way of them to do some predictive analysis and say, okay, what's going to happen? What's the trend? But we have all of that data. We have the digital footprint of the customer. We have the digital footprint of all the sellers on the platform who are selling other things. And we can say, in the last 1 month, here are the best sellers as far as shirts are concerned. Here are the best sellers as far as jeans are concerned. And if you really want to grow in this category, these are the ones to invest in. Okay. So those are really the things they care about. So first level, okay, you give me, I get access to working capital. Second level, I take it to how do I then, optimize that working capital more efficiently. So it's that kind of thinking. And we need to start thinking way beyond just the two examples I've given to say, what else can these guys do? What else can we provide to them that can really improve their financial inclusion? On the customer side, we can also check and say to a customer, I know your browsing history. I know that in the past 2 months you've browsed, you've checked for a certain large item, and you've checked out like 3 times. Is the problem affordability? If it's affordability, well, we've looked at your customer profile score, and we think that consistently you don't fail on delivery. Like I said, I gave you the example of you carry the fridge or freezer and you get there and the customer says, well, I'm sorry, I don't have the cash. I really was just testing the platform. I didn't know that it works. Okay. So, of course, such customers don't get a good profile score. But customers who consistently, even when they select payment on delivery, they go through the effort to make sure the money is available. If they're not home, someone is home to receive the item. That's a very strong indicator of what the customer's credit pattern will be, even if the customer has never borrowed money from any entity before. And so we start to think and say, okay, what can we use the customer profile score? How do we leverage that for better financial inclusion? How do we look at, today we're also thinking, how do we leverage all the parallel sources of data? So we have a customer behavior on our platform. Telcos also have customer phone records. Banks have a BVN. Can we cross-reference these things and begin to proactively offer things to customers, be the health insurance, be the loan products, and so on and so forth? So that's a story. I think I've spent how many minutes telling this story? Okay. So I'm just going to wrap up with how we see the future. We think that in Africa, at least, I mean, I can only speak for the market that I understand, we don't have a choice but to go digital. We've missed every revolution. We've missed the Industrial Revolution. We've missed everything else. This is the only one that our population, particularly our young population, is able to access. So we need to leverage it. And I'm saying these things also to the government in my own country. Say, guys, you don't understand digital. We're still in the old way of doing things. You need to begin to understand it and begin to enable it, because these are the things that will really enable growth in our economies. And why is that? Most people don't have, maybe they don't have an iPad, they don't have a laptop, they may never have one. But consistently over the past 3 years, and I must say with the effort that we have also made, we've brought down the cost of smartphones. I think in 2014, a smartphone in Nigeria was possibly about $300. Today, you can get a relatively good smartphone, a Chinese brand, for less than $100. So you're providing more access to more people. And then we see that these guys are constantly on the app. And even our conversion rate is much higher on the app. People spend more time on the app. If they were on their web browser, on their laptop or their iPad or something, well, they're going to get busy with work, and then you have an abandoned cart or something. But Most times when they're in the app, they complete the transaction. Okay, so they are digital. We need to leverage their behaviors to be able to provide services where they are. And we are going to continue to do that. At least that's our vision in Jumia, that we would use the power of the internet to change the lives of people on the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juliet. That's good, encouraging, telling us about your views of where you want to take Jumia and how the customer is at the focus of what you're doing and the use of technology. Thank you very much. Juliet has kindly agreed to answer a few questions from the audience. We have some time.
Hi, my name is Amy Davis. I'm with the Catholic Relief Services. The first question I have is, what's the most popular seller amongst your female market from, let's say, 20 to 35, if you have an idea? And then I was really interested to hear you say that you found that the focus is maintained when people use the app, as opposed to operating on a browser at your site. So if you have any other information or data about that.
So the first question, I think, is about, is it in terms of the seller who sells the most to customers within that age range, or the product that is more popular with that age? Both, okay. So within that age range, I don't think it's one product. You would have to look at multiple categories, because I think today we have about 1.7 million SKUs on our platform. So you're talking different things, diapers, fashion, and all sorts. But fashion does tend to be more of in demand for that age range. I mean, T-shirts, normal work shirts, fashion dresses in general. So fashion is major for them. And then in terms of the most popular sellers, they are not actually the international brands. I mean, it's almost stands to reason, because you're talking about ensuring that you have price points that are within a certain band. Okay, so if I have a fashion product that is within the band of, what's it called now, 3,500 naira, I think that would be equivalent of 10 to 15 euros. Okay, that's the sweet spot for that demographic. And so they would go for that. Okay, the higher price points don't really attract that demographic. And I've also spent some time with telcos to understand what's their own sweet spot as well, in terms of how much airtime people actually buy in a month. And it tends to be within that range. So they have a higher population of customers within that range. So there's a good correlation in terms of when we go too high, the conversion rates drops. And then when we stay within that range, the conversion rate on the platform is much higher.
Hi, my name is Richard Leftley. I work for Microinsure. Firstly, thank you ever so much. Having suffered from malaria a few times, I know what it feels like, and thank you for kind of coming to be with us today. You were talking that 70% of your purchasers currently still pay on cash on delivery.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a huge cost of that. There's also a huge kind of potential for people actually not being in or not making the payment. And so there's a huge cost to your business.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why you've introduced the app, is to try and convert people from cash on delivery to payment up front.
Yeah.
Have you looked at, or are you considering ways to use financial services to try and increase or reward people for swapping over to the app, and then also for using the app? Because obviously the economics for you are significantly changed if people can start to use the app. And have you looked at the way in which telcos, for example, have used insurance and other financial services to try and increase loyalty in how people, spend more of their top up with one telco rather than the other? And the second question is in China, for example, shipping return insurance became a big thing. So people buying from e-commerce platforms wanted the ability to be able to return the goods at no cost. Is that something that you've looked at, and is it something that you could see working in Nigeria?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Today we haven't started it. We're certainly looking at it. We're looking at some players that are already providing that service to Alibaba, but in partnership with some other players in our market, because they are not yet in our market. Okay, so we're looking at that insurance, but it's interestingly, return rate, despite the payment on delivery, is actually 2% on our platform. Okay, what is higher is failed delivery. Okay, failed delivery that, you know, I gave the customer advance notice that I was going to be there at, the delivery guy was going to be there at a certain time. He's got an SMS and an email to confirm that, and he's even confirmed. And then he gets there and he, you know, he says, well, you know, I'm sorry, I'm in another town. So failed delivery is much higher. But overall, our delivery success rate overall is still roughly in the 80s. And we're trying to push that up to the 90s. I mean, countries like Thailand, Singapore, one of our sister platforms, Lazada. Lazada is doing about 95% delivery success rate, and they offer payment on delivery as well. So that's really where we want to go, you know, take it. Forgive me, the first question, I got carried away with the second one. Oh yes, sure. So, so we've also launched what we call Jumia Pay. Okay, it's sort of like an e-wallet. So it's also, we reward customers by saying, if you use Jumia Pay to pay, then we give you 5% discount on the product. So trying to also incentivize people using the app and paying online and so on. The reason why we estimate that payment on delivery will still be in our market for a while to come is still because of the payment infrastructure, the stability of the payment infrastructure at the back end. So the switching networks and so on. We have a lot of invalid transactions. Once the customer exits our platform, for example, and he's chosen to pay with a debit card or credit card, and it's on another platform, that redirect often causes some drop-offs. Okay. And also, a lot of customers, also some invalids also because customers don't check, they don't know if they actually have enough money in their account to place the order and pay for it online. Okay. So these are some of the reasons why, even though I want to go to exclusively prepay, it's certainly better for me from planning purposes and so on, because when you look at the delivery success rate and the return rate, for prepay is almost 100% delivery success rate, because once I've paid for it, I know I really want it. I know that worst case, if I don't like it, I can activate the return. I still have a certain timeline which will offer you to return the item for free. We don't charge you anything. So the delivery success rate is higher with prepay. So we'd love to go there, but just dealing with some of the infrastructural issues, and sometimes it's not the payment platform, sometimes it's just internet, you know, connectivity and so on. Those are the issues. Okay. But certainly we are incentivizing customers to go on the app.
Okay, this lady in the front table, yes.
Thank you for sharing your experience of Jumia in Nigeria. My name is Lai Samoyen. I'm a managing partner of Kinaya Lab. Could you tell us more about what you're currently developing in Nigeria with microfinance institutions and banks in order to boost your customers' sales?
Today, we're onboarding as many microfinance institutions and banks as are interested to make sure that we can offer different loan products to our customers. Okay, what I'm saying is that we didn't set out to go into that. It became a need because, like I said, if you want these guys to grow, you need to make sure that within that ecosystem that you can bring in banks, other financial institutions within the ecosystem to be able to provide those services to customers. So that's what we're doing. We're also talking to telcos, and we see that some of the telcos, one of their biggest products, it's airtime credit. So a customer wants to buy airtime, and maybe he only has half the money available, and the telco advances credit to the customer to buy the airtime. Of course, the airtime is on their network, so you know it's nice and safe. And the customer pays a fee. So if I paid for airtime worth 10 euros, I get 10 euros less the fee as the actual airtime that I get. Okay. So we're also looking at it, say, okay, how do we work together? Because it seems to be a major product for customers, especially customers who their use profile is they buy airtime within that range I talked about, 10 euros, 20 euros per month. So how do we ensure that we can work with the telcos and maybe be able to provide certain interesting services for them? The other thing we've launched recently is what we call Jumia One. So Jumia One is, because so before we had the app, which was a Jumia app, okay, and you could more or less within the app, you could go to the e-commerce site, you can go to the food site, you can go, you know, but you had to click on all of them separately. So with the Jumia One app, we are providing a wider array of services. So now you can buy airtime on our platform, you can also shop online on Jumia, you can order your food, and we're trying to bring in more and more services to really create it as a lifestyle product for the average Joe who doesn't have so much access. So these are things that we're doing currently.
Thank you. My name is Kafui Milsodoe. I manage EADA.
Nice dress.
Thank you. Implemented by global communities. I'm looking at a risk component and wanted you to clarify that a bit. So if you're looking at payment on delivery, and in our parts, we tend to do a lot of cash transactions. I'm trying to find out what kinds of systems you've put in place for those who do the direct delivery and collect the cash.
Yeah, yeah.
What system is there to minimize
the risk,
risk of losing money?
Okay.
And what experiences have you had with that part of the value chain? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The risk is actually not just to products. The risk can also be to loss of life of the delivery associate. If someone who's desperate enough and is on drugs or something and a guy shows up, either he sees two things. One is cash. The other one is a product, a high value product he can sell off and get access to cash. So those are the risks, and they do exist. So what we do today, and this is again where a lot of financial institutions come into play, is we have agreements with them in terms of sweep. Okay, we have minimum amounts of cash that a delivery associate can hold at any point in time, and then we have scheduled sweeps through the banks, and they literally make sure that they go around as many times as possible to sweep whatever cash is available and move that into the banks. We've also created another solution where the delivery associate, we have a network of banks, so not just one bank, because one bank may not have the full branch network that will cater to this need. So we have a full network of banks within a consortium, and we have an arrangement where delivery associates can walk into the closest bank. It doesn't matter, it could be bank A, bank B, bank C. They're all in that consortium, and drop his cash and then continue his runs. So we built all that into calculation of how many runs he can do in a day and how much he can complete in a day. And we've had one or two incidences. People have hijacked the truck from the delivery associate and taken the goods and so on. But really, net, when you look at the risk, it's still a containable risk. I think in terms of mitigation, we've fairly been able to mitigate it.
Hi, this is Amolo from BFA in Nairobi, and I have Jumia and Jumia food apps on my phone, and I don't know how many other people, there are several people at my table who also have those apps. The question is about addresses. Are addresses important for delivery?
I think very important for delivery. In Nigeria, I remember a nephew of mine did an internship, 2 weeks internship with us. And he says, and people tell me, and he was on the end of confirming orders for customers. And that's another thing that will come to confirmation of orders. When you're on Amazon, you just place the order, you've paid, you just get a confirmation email. Hang on a second, not so fast in Africa, at least not in Nigeria. You've got to call the customer and say, did you actually want 2 or just 1? Yeah? And then the customer said, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that I actually added 2. So you save yourself the hassle of carrying 2 back to the customer and then backward reverse delivery with 1. because it has all sorts of, reverse logistics has all sorts of challenges which we need to manage. So we typically do that confirmation, and we only bypass where the customer has consistently ordered on our platform, and so we can almost assume that the customer will receive the order. So yes, in terms of sorry, I think the question was, I get carried away with the second part and I missed the first part.
Addresses.
Sorry?
Addresses.
Good, addresses, yes. So in terms of addresses, people will tell you, it's just next door. That lady who sells fish, okay, is just right next to her. Okay, well, the lady who sells fish is not an address. So we work closely with Google. Google has created certain products for our market that we can use to have a better address system for customers and be able to do that. So those are the kinds of partnerships that we have. So really, if I look at everything we do, like I said, it's an ecosystem. There is a partner at the back end somewhere supporting. It's almost impossible that all the capabilities that are required to make it work, that we can provide it all by ourselves. It's just not possible. So whether it's a Google or whether it's a Facebook or it's logistics providers or banks or microfinance institutions, there's always a partner at the back end. Yeah.
Okay, one last question. We're going to abuse your time for one last question. It's over this lady. Would you stand up?
Good morning, Anne-Laure from Advance Group. We are a partner of Jumia in Côte d'Ivoire. We are piloting loan mechanism for your traders.
Okay.
One question on the innovation for the delivery to customers. Do you have any inspiring examples of new way of delivery for your customers?
Sure. Okay, so in terms of logistics, we're testing new things. At least in our market, and I'm sure it's the same thing in other African countries, it's almost impossible to get, big logistics partners who are willing to do cash on delivery. Okay, a DHL is not going to touch it, UPS is not going to touch it. So you have to develop a combination of your own capability to do it for last mile, and also get third-party logistics players to hook into your network and be able to do that. But then these third-party logistics companies, they're not necessarily big entities. It could be a guy with just a few trucks, a few tricycles, and he has them available. He doesn't know anything about process, doesn't know anything about structure, and you have to spend some time bringing him up to speed on all of that. So those are the challenges we face. Next week we start, so a very good example, next week we're going to start our Jumia Black Friday. Okay, it's a 1-month marketing campaign that we start on the 13th of November. And one of the things we're testing this time around is, I don't know if they have them in Ghana, but these tricycles that, are transport tricycles that move people around, because we just don't have enough capacity within the third-party logistics network, we've got to try new models. So that's one new model we're going to try. We've done a pilot. It worked. So we want to really try it and see. Maybe next thing we're going to have women carry things on their heads, or but any which way, but to get it to the customer, okay, and do it within the context of the environment that we operate.
Okay, very good. I always learn a lot by these keynote speeches, but I think we also learn a lot more by the questions and answers. So thank you very much, Juliet, for taking the time. I know you're suffering. Let's have a big round of applause for Juliet Anammah.